Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost Show. I am one half of your host, Therman Trotman. I'm here with my co-host, Nick DeCourcy. Nick, what's going on?
How are we doing, Therman?
I'm great. Always great.
You're always great.
Um, but of course, you know what I mean, even better, you know what I mean? And I'm here doing this show with you. So let's jump into the topic. I want to talk to you about connectors. This was something that you had on your mind here
Yep.
about, the when you said connectors, I was thinking, Power Automate and stuff like
Yep.
that, because
Yep.
for people who are familiar, if you go inside of Power Automate and you want to run a flow, there's like a ton of connectors that you can use to, reach out and grab information or to connect to other applications. So it's the same thing, but we're talking about, AI in this situation, correct?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think this is a little bit of maybe like going down like a nerdy rabbit hole on one hand, and maybe like a useful PSA on the other. So, hopefully, we
Let's do
manage
it.
to like go somewhere down the middle of those two things. But
Yeah.
there's been a lot of noise going on just recently because Anthropic decided that they would include access to Microsoft 365 data in all of their tiers, including free tier. And this is something that's not new because ChatGPT has had this for a little while, going back a couple of years. You've been able to access Microsoft 365 data. Now, every time this comes up and a new service is like, hey, we've got an AI service and you can now get your Microsoft 365 data, there's a whole bunch of people who get very excited about it. There's a whole bunch of people that get very concerned about the risks of it. And there's probably a
Mhm.
line of reality that sits somewhere in the middle of this that people should understand, particularly if you're thinking, well, what can Claude do versus Copilot versus ChatGPT now? Where does this all stand? So I thought maybe it's something we could have a conversation about. You might be interested in this from the point of view of what these things are doing, but more so members of our audience, whether they're individuals that are using these tools, or maybe you're someone who's deploying these tools within your business and you're concerned about what you're seeing here.
Well, yeah. First thing I want to make sure is that, am I on the right path when I think about um, Claude
Hmm.
being connected to Microsoft 365 is separate from where you have Claude in Microsoft 365, Claude Cowork inside of Microsoft 365. If you do that, it has access to your Microsoft 365 information. That's one way.
Yep.
And then we're talking about Claude, which is outside of Microsoft 365,
Yep.
having a connector that reaches into 365 and gets access to that data.
Correct. And there are
Yeah.
two distinct elements of this that we should think about. One of them is technical. What is the difference in technical capability that's actually being surfaced there? And the other one
Mhm.
is contractual. What is the difference in the deal that you have about what's happening with that data once you decide to connect these things? And both are important. I would say that depending on where you covered it from, you might focus on one versus the other. But I think any organization that's thinking about these things must think about both of these elements.
Right, right, right. So let's talk about that. Like what that even looks like if I do it. So
Hmm.
maybe I'm not a Microsoft 365 user, but I am a Claude user and I use it for work. Um, maybe as an individual, I'm using it for work and I don't know, I got a briefing coming up. But I do at work, I have 365 and I have some PowerPoint slides, maybe some branding that's attached to it. If I attach my through the connector, if I attach my 365 to Claude, am I now able to stay inside of Claude and create briefings
Mm-hmm.
using those templates and stuff like that?
Yeah, so let's step back from that a little, because let's say you're starting out and you have a Claude account and you have a Microsoft 365 account, right? And your
Mm-hmm.
work gives you a Microsoft 365 account, you have a private Claude account. So,
Yes.
in a lot of cases, if your business hasn't made provision otherwise in terms of how they've set up Microsoft 365, and I'd highly recommend that most businesses do, but if they haven't, then you would be free to say, go to a SharePoint site within your environment, download some information from a SharePoint site, whether it's a slide deck or whether it's a PDF or whatever it might be, um, stick it on your desktop maybe, and then go to your private Claude account and use that information within Claude. Right now, I'm not recommending that, and in most cases, even if you weren't breaking something from a technology point of view, you would be breaking some understanding of what you're supposed to do as an employee of your organization, right? Because you'd be
Right.
breaking a confidentiality or a non-disclosure or whatever the case may be. But
Right.
in most cases, there's some way for you to do that. Now, the question is, well, what are you going to get out of it and what's the problem with it, right? So what you're going to get out of it is perhaps you prefer the way that Claude works over Copilot, or you don't have a full Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Maybe we're talking about ChatGPT. Maybe we're talking about DeepSeek. We might be talking about other services as well. So you're able to use your tool of choice. You use your data. And then by default, if you haven't changed anything with your free Claude account or your free ChatGPT account, those companies are allowed to hold on to your interaction, which is going to include the data that you entered as part of your prompt, so that file, and they can use it for their benefit in the future. So they can use it for model training and so on and so forth. And this is the problem that we kind of express at a most basic level as shadow AI, right? So we've talked about shadow IT for a long time. This is now shadow AI, that users are opting, I want to use X AI, and that's not the one that's given to them by work. So we can all kind of understand what the problem is there, right? That you're potentially losing control of data. Your organization has lost control of data. If you leave that company, then in 2 years' time, your company's data is still in your Claude chat history. It's not under the control of your organization anymore. So all bets are off the table in terms of what happens to that. Now, as an administrator in Microsoft 365, can you do stuff to prevent that? Absolutely. And you should, but it's important to understand what the default experience would be, right? So we need to think about that. A couple of years ago, ChatGPT added an option whereby you could log in with your user credentials to Microsoft 365 from ChatGPT. And it would be a connector. It's exactly the same as, for years we've used things like Calendly, where we've gone and we've set up a Calendly account and you've put in your credentials and it's allowed you to see your calendar and it's booked stuff for you. And a lot of the time, particularly in smaller businesses, no one's really thought much about that, like it's something that's useful. If you choose to have a Calendly account, who cares, like if you're seeing people, if you're getting meetings, if you're selling stuff, then I'm not going to stand in your way of having a Calendly account. But that is an element of shadow IT. Your calendar is owned by the company, and should you be sharing it with a third party without the okay to do it? Probably not. So now we're
Right.
doing the same thing with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT caused an uproar a couple of years ago where they went down the road of creating these connectors, and people said, well, why does Microsoft allow them to do it? And the answer is because they've allowed Calendly to do it all these years. Like the basic tooling that exists within the Graph API and the tooling that exists within Azure to have registered applications and allowing those applications to run within your organization that has access to certain data. This is something that by default is turned on in every Microsoft 365 tenant. As an administrator, should you turn it off? Probably, but by default it's turned on, right? So it's there, you're able to
Right.
do it, and that's what's allowed us to do that kind of login and allow things to happen like that. But it's the same
Mm-hmm.
basic problem that if someone logs in with their ChatGPT team account, say, then you have control over that. But if they log in with their ChatGPT personal account, you have no control over it whatsoever. Even if they're using their corporate credit card to pay for that personal account, right? You're paying for it, but you still don't have control over it. You as an
Right.
administrator, you can't go in and turn it off in the same way you would a Microsoft 365 license. So essentially, what Claude has done, or Anthropic has done over the course of the last couple of weeks, is they've enabled a very similar capability for Claude as has existed in ChatGPT for a while. And it uses the same capabilities, it uses graph search, etc., to surface files. It's the same infrastructure. They've made it a little bit more secure in the so far as you have to have an admin actually okay tenant-wide access before you can use it, which I don't think was the case for ChatGPT previously.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, we're able to do it. So Claude can go in and search your stuff, and if your admin allows you to do it, then you can use a free account with Claude. If you're an admin, absolutely you shouldn't allow people to do that. but that's the technology. So does that kind of explain where we're at?
Yeah, yeah, it does. And then also to be clear, when ChatGPT did it, was it free?
Yeah, yeah. So it's been free. I mean, I think when it first rolled out, it was part of their paid tiers, and Claude has had it as part of their paid tiers as well. So I don't think that I mean, the free thing allows this to hit the news cycle, right? It allows there to be some noise about it. But the underlying risk is exactly the same, whether you're talking about free accounts or paid personal accounts. The differentiator is, are people using an account where you have control over what's happening to the data and you have visibility into what terms they're agreeing to when they're using that data, or don't you? And that really is the difference between a personal account and a business account in all of these scenarios.
Yeah. It's man, I cannot get over the fact of how risky it is, though. It even though it's just like Calendly,
Mm,
somebody like me who is normally optimistic, I have always felt like you don't you where's the confirmation? Where's the validation? Where's the understanding or verification that these companies do what they say they're going to do? Because connecting to Calendly is still risky. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
It's not AI, but it's still like you are exposing your data through these channels to an external program, which just by itself is risky. But now you're talking about somebody who is probably not trained up, you know what I'm saying, or doesn't care about, security. They just want to get their work done. That's it's an inherent risk. You know what I'm saying? The only way you stop that is by turning on hitting the settings and saying like this
mm,
can't
mm,
happen. So shutting the whole thing down. Um I think that it's a little bit more risky or seemingly risky when we're talking about AI, because AI seems like, or I guess it is, way more powerful than just, connecting a calendar. It's almost like if it can get in there and do things that you couldn't do before. So this
mm,
makes it even more riskier. So it's like I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? It's except you shut it down. But I think the fix, maybe I'm wrong, I think the fix is having Copilot within the environment and being able to use it that way. But back to my original point where I was talking about, how Claude is now part of 365, that to me solves the problem for people who work at
mm,
a job and they're providing AI support. I mean, they're providing AI resources for the employees. I don't think your employees should want to, and this is pie in the sky, should want to operate in a different chatbot that's connected to your data, you know, on their own to some chatbot that you don't have authorized within the environment.
mm,
But
mm,
I know that's not realistic. You know what I'm saying? So it's all good. But now that we
mm,
know what this looks like, you know what I'm saying? Like what we're doing here. Back to my example of being able to even do this. We understand it's risky, but I do have it correct where like I can do some pretty cool stuff connecting to my information from Claude and then, using that free connector to get to 365. I can do things like prepare slides, or what about email? Can I give them my email too? Can
mm.
I have
So it's read
yeah,
access. So in all cases, it's read access. So in some ways, Calendly has more access into Microsoft 365 than Claude does,
right, because
because
it can write to the
Calendly is
calendar.
allowed to write onto my calendar, whereas Claude
Yeah.
just reads stuff from Microsoft. So depending on how you look at it, what's the risk profile, right? So it's reading stuff. Now, I think there's a tendency for all of us in the IT space to get very excited about this type of thing, right? And to some extent, say you run a restaurant and you use AI to like help you with your menus, for example, or help you with your ordering or something like that. Who cares? What is proprietary in that information? What is confidential in that information? What is something that someone else down the street could do on their own anyway? So,
What
who
about a
cares if
secret recipe?
Well, I
What
mean,
about
if
a
you're
family?
protecting like the recipe to Coca-Cola, then sure, But most restaurants aren't, Like if you're running like a gardening company or you're doing something like, I think we extrapolate this like, oh my goodness, everyone is financial services or everyone is healthcare or something like that. And in most cases they aren't. So actually, how big a risk is this? In the grand scheme of things, like actually, I'm far more concerned in some ways about someone going off and setting up their own CRM system. They're like, oh, I don't like the one that we're using internally, so I'm going to go and set up my own HubSpot account and start using that. That concerns me a lot more than them writing a few customer letters in their own ChatGPT account, right? I just
Mhm.
I don't see that those two things are related in the way that we tend to have related them. And I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash from this because I'm basically saying, everyone who's excited about IT security, just chill a minute, right? But I do think that there's a tendency for like everyone in the IT space to be like the sky is falling as soon as any information is shared with anyone about anything, and that just isn't the way that the world works. So I think there's another factor in this, and you're right. Copilot is the fix to some of this. But there is an interesting thing to think about, and that is that in the past, the way that we have done our job, not the specifics of like what we do, not the work product that we create, not the inputs or the outputs, but the stuff that we do in the middle is something that is marketable. That when we decide to go and get a different job, we are writing a job application on the basis of what is it that we've done? Like, what are we capable of doing? What are the skills that we have to be able to get from A to B, right? That's how you go from job A to job B to job C. Now, if we're doing all of our AI thinking, all of our AI processing, all of our ideation in a tool where the entire end-to-end data of not just the inputs and the outputs, but also how we think about getting our work done is in a system that is owned by our employer and not owned by us. But the requirement in every organization is you should be using AI to accelerate the way that you're doing things. We're thinking about tooling like Work IQ, where Work IQ gets to know us and how we work and our preferences over time. Is there not an argument to say that ideation capacity, that way of thinking about work, that way of getting things done, should be something that we own and we're able to take with us? Because our companies don't own the way we think; they simply own the inputs and the outputs. And
Yeah,
I think this is something that we really need to think about when we look at these kinds of issues.
yeah. We talked about this before. I remember thinking like, that's your special sauce. That's your thing. Like if I created a spreadsheet that the company was using, and this spreadsheet was filled with macros and all this other stuff, and maybe just for my department, I'm in finance. I had everybody in finance using this. When I leave, can I take my spreadsheet with me and go use it at another company? I'm pretty sure no one is stopping anybody from taking some custom spreadsheet that they made to the next company and using it.
Or
But
the
where does
knowledge
that
of how to
line?
do it. I think that's the
Huh?
important thing, that even if they stop you taking the file, they can't stop you from taking the knowledge that you use to create that file, right?
Correct. They
And
they they
that
can't
is the
stop
thing
me.
that
Yeah.
parallels to the AI, right? Is we're using the AI to boost our ability to do things, right? It's essentially an
Mhm.
amplifier of knowledge and skill, and capability to deliver an output, right? But it's
Mhm.
our input along with whatever kind of data we're taking that is enabling that amplification. It's the input that we give that is being amplified towards the output. So is that input that we're giving not the same as the time that you're spending developing that spreadsheet? If AI was to develop
Yeah.
that spreadsheet for you, are the instructions that you gave to AI to develop that spreadsheet not your own? The way you thought
Yeah.
about, like, what does the spreadsheet need to look like? What data do we need to track? What's actually important to getting this done? That's important, right? And if that's locked, if that thinking process that is triggered by your input, if that kind of amplification of how you work is locked by your company, aren't you losing something when you move to your next company and you're starting with a clean slate with a new Copilot that you have to train from day one, not just on how your company does business, but on how you do business as an employee?
Yeah, yeah. That man, that's crazy. Yes, I agree. Because if you the way we would find things before, let's say it was Google. Let's say you're like, how do I come up with this spreadsheet that I think would be perfect for my department? So you Google around, you try to find a solution, and now that you've found a few different things, you can now piece together in your head the best way to do this. What was happening before is like maybe your Google searches were captured. You can see the history of your Google searches, but the way that you thought and completed the thought and came to the final outcome, that wasn't captured anywhere. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
wrote it in your notebook or something like that, you know what I'm saying? Or it's all in your head, but your thought process and connecting the dots and going to completion wasn't captured. Where
Mm-hmm.
now, if you're using a chatbot, your thought process can be captured. And it doesn't have to be read by another human. It can just exist, and you can use
Mm-hmm.
more AI to capture it. Hey, look at this. How did this person come to this conclusion? Summarize it or whatever. That's insane. You know what I'm saying? But on the flip side, does the person even come up with this spreadsheet if they're not working this job? Do they even know that there's a need for a cars sold versus cars not sold over this time period for this
Mm-hmm.
brand with these people? Do they even know that that is a thing if they don't work at the job?
Well,
I
I
doubt it.
think this is a really interesting question you're asking, because it comes down to like what is the where does the value creation sit, right? Because value creation, like, I can only create value that is related to the opportunities that I have in front of me to create value on, right? So it doesn't matter how wonderful a job I could have or I could do, creating better Copilot marketing for Microsoft. Microsoft hasn't invited me to do that. So, and Microsoft, if you're watching, then you know my email address. But the point is that isn't an opportunity that's afforded itself to me. So it doesn't really matter how good a job I could do at doing that, because I've not got that opportunity, right? So, but we have to also recognize that the things that organizations do successfully is down to the fact that they have given the opportunity to do those things to the right people that have given them success, right? So if you think about the example of Claude, right, with the connector, okay, the day that I leave my company, the company turns off access to the data in their company and my connector no longer works. And a day later, I join another company and they have Microsoft 365 and I connect into their data and I say, okay, Claude, I want to do my Monday morning catch up on all my emails. Could you go ahead and do it? And Claude knows how I like to do that. It knows how I get that work done well because it's seen that previously. And so it's able to apply that pattern of how I work best to my new employer's situation, which is surely what I'm selling my employer when I go and I interview for a job and I tell them I could do X, I could do Y. There's never been like a situation where you're like, okay, well, you have to forget everything that you know about Excel before you can go to your new employer, right? No one's ever said that. Like, let's
Right,
wipe your brain before you go somewhere. So
right.
I think this is an interesting point, and the right answer, the right IT answer to this problem is you must use Copilot. And I think you should use Copilot because I think Copilot offers a lot of options to organizations. But I do have to acknowledge that in creating options for organizations, we are potentially also closing doors to individuals in terms of their portability between organizations. And this is a topic that just is an unsolved problem right now. And it's something that we need to be talking about more, because for every person that's sitting there saying, this is wonderful that I can use Claude with my Microsoft 365 data, there's an IT admin or a business owner over here that's saying this is horrendous because there's the potential for people to be stealing all our data. And those are
Hmm.
two different tracks that are tangentially related, but they don't get to the core of what the problem is with AI. And it's a particular problem with AI that doesn't exist with Calendly or other things like that. It's not a
Yeah.
technology problem, it's a people problem.
Yeah, I think about though, as you're talking, I immediately started to remember that disgusting firing the other day by Ellison's company, Oracle. So
Oh
Oracle,
yeah.
they said it was up to 30,000 jobs, which if it was 30,000, that's insane. But the way that it happened, apparently they came in on Monday, got an email, you're cooked, and lost access to everything. So let's say during this time, that company was using Microsoft, you were using Copilot, and all of the cool stuff you was coming up with, you have everything. You got your main chat, you got your pages that you've created, you got all kinds of things that you have built up, some notebooks, some reference, like everything you've built up in AI. You followed the rules and you said, yeah, I'm not going to expose this information. I'm going to do it within the confines of the company. But there's a combination of what really only belongs to Oracle, but then also what belongs to you and your brain power and what you
Mm,
thought of and how you connect the dots sitting in that. 6 a.m. Monday morning, when you get the email, you have now also lost access to that all your thoughts and processes over the last couple of years. That is insane. The person who didn't follow the rules and said, I'm going to use Claude because I find that better,
mm,
when they lost access at 6 a.m. In the morning, they were still fine. They still had all of their stuff inside of Claude because the company doesn't control that.
mm, mm.
If I'm thinking about this as an individual, I'm going to be like, I'm not using a Copilot
No, I
because
mean, this is the
that's not.
conundrum, right?
Yes,
Like,
that's not
like,
okay. I got a lot to say about that stupid ass. That firing. I was very hot when I read that situation, but whatever. It's that's the conundrum. You're right, because both entities have a leg to stand on.
mm, mm. And they're not going to
I don't know
agree.
if you do that.
I mean, they're never going to agree. This has been like a conceptual issue that has. I mean, no one's ever left with like boxes of their files and so on and so forth. Like, there's always been a concept of leaving something behind when you've left an organization, whether you've left on your own volition or whether you've left because you've been invited to leave. There's always been a
Mm-hmm.
concept of you're leaving something behind. It's just
Mm-hmm.
what you're potentially leaving behind in the age of AI feels like it's different than what you may have left behind before. And I think this is a conversation that we need to have that goes beyond this idea of what is the technical capability of a connector from one end to the connector from the other. The right answer technically is always going to be that Copilot works better because it's got better access into your data, right? So the way that it's searching for stuff is better, the way that it knows you is better. You're going to get more fidelity out of it, and your organization is going to get more out of you using it. But I do understand that some people will say, well, I want a tool over here that has access to my stuff. And I understand why they might say that. And I think this is going to be something that grows as time goes on and people more understand how critical their AI co worker is to what they're able to achieve in work and life.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. I'm gonna put you on the spot here right before we get out of here.
Yeah.
As a business owner, you're a small business owner.
Mm.
You are growing your business. Let's say you start to hire,
Yep.
and obviously you maybe during intake, onboarding, you have a responsible AI course, which I think is an excellent idea. You're doing onboarding, and maybe day 3 you take your AI course, and maybe somewhere in your policy, correct me if I'm wrong, you would say the company asks that you use Copilot first as your chat. Um, it is unauthorized that you take any of our data and put it inside of an external AI company, AI chatbot, whatever.
Mm. Mm.
Um, when this person, if and when this person decides to leave, whether they're leaving because they're moving on to a new opportunity or because you've deemed them unfit for the position, what's your take? What do you say when they are leaving and they are maybe interested in taking their chat history?
Mm.
Are you against that?
I think it. I think there's a need to wrap some technology around it because for contractual reasons, there are certain things that you wouldn't want people to disappear with.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's an exceptionally narrow path that should not be the norm, where you don't want people to leave in a better position than they were when they arrived, right? I think the general rule should be if you hire someone, if you're working with someone, if you're contracting with someone, you want them to be in a better position when they leave you, and you want you to be in a better position when they leave you as well. Like that's the route that we're trying to get down. It doesn't always work out that way, but we should try to make sure that that's the not the norm. And even if you have to like let someone go because it hasn't worked out, like I would still say that you want each party in that to have learned something through that experience, which gets you to a better position, right? So even if something doesn't work out, it doesn't have to be a huge negative. Like it can be like a learning experience for everyone involved if it's handled in the right way. So to
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
extent, as things grow, should you be able to take stuff like your prompts with you? Should you be able to take stuff like if you've got some custom instructions that you use with Copilot, should you be able to take those with you? Should you be able to take an output of all your scheduled prompts so that you know what you do each day, so you don't just walk in cold to a new employer and suddenly all the things that you've had set up to help you succeed don't exist for you anymore? I think so long as it doesn't involve any protected data, then I would feel very comfortable with that because we're saying, you know, I was doing a course this afternoon, and one of the stats from Microsoft is that if you're a power user of Copilot, 91% of people who would identify as power users feel that having Copilot makes them happier at work. Now, that's not just good for employees, that is also
Interesting.
good for employers, right? Having a
Mm-hmm.
situation where people feel better about going to work, they feel better in their life, is better for everyone. And so
Yes.
the more that we can advocate for that, that, you know, if you're not happy working for me, then I want you to be happy working for someone else. To the degree that Copilot or AI is a part of that, then we need to help people. We don't say to people, hey, you need to give up your certifications before you move on. You know, I paid for you to take that exam, therefore I want you to relinquish it before you move on to the next employee. We don't say that, do we? So why would we say it about AI? So I think there needs to be a technical solution to this problem, but conceptually, I think we need to be open to the idea that this is a set of tools realized in technology that are about how people work and think about their own work processes. And we need to enable them to grow them over the course of their career, not just over the course
Mm-hmm.
of one job.
Yeah. Sorry, pardon me. I had to sneeze. I think that we're gonna get to a place, right? Just indulge me real quick. I think that we're gonna get to a place where, or we can get to a place where the employee, that concept of an employee starts to fade away. And here's why I say that. Because if you're an employer and you employ people, you hire people, it's almost a no-brainer that if you can get somebody to do a certain level of work, or if you can get the same level of work accomplished by using some kind of agent, and this agent obviously is not a human, so it doesn't need, like I always say, it doesn't need smoke breaks. It doesn't need to take days off because something's going on with the kids. It doesn't need to even, unfortunately, bring its problems. Some people don't want to deal with that. You're going to go with that. You're going to go with an agent because the agent can accomplish the work that you need done, and it doesn't come with the quote baggage that a human comes with, right? So that's what an employer would do. Again, the firing of the 30,000 people, they said it was to fund these data centers, which if you're funding data centers, then obviously, we're talking about AI again. So, AI is driving that. But that's the employer making tough decisions. As an employee, I foresee you also making tough decisions, but it's kind of different. So, like, if you're an employee who you worked at Oracle and you get let go, if you're good, You know what I mean? At what you do. If you think you're pretty good at what you do, you also now become this new age employer, or maybe whatever the thing looks like. You say, okay, I got fired, but I'm good at what I do. And I want to be able to, I need to make money. I got to support my family. Let me sell my services, but I'm not going to hire anyone either. What I'm going to do is create agents, because what I was good at was being, I'm a good developer. I'm a really good developer. And, I create the OS for a lot of these kinds of systems. It would be great if I could have an agent that I train to do some part of that process for me and help me with that, because I don't know how to talk to people. So maybe I got an agent that's doing marketing for me or doing sales calls for me or whatever. The point is, you go from being an employee to being something like an employer. You're not interested in being some big business owner. You need to make some money. You know what I'm saying? To support your family. You might go down the road of hiring or creating agents to do this work for you. And that's where a majority of the world might be going. Like the whole concept of a company hiring you and you paying and getting your health care and getting your what is that called, your retirement and all this other stuff. That model starts to fade away, because most people are not going to be an employee or an employer. There'll be this other thing where it's supported by agents, but you're not running around here talking about, I'm building big businesses or whatever. Something like that. That's where my mind went as we winded down on this conversation. I'm like, man, that's crazy. But it's, at least that's more fathomable in my brain to see, instead of everybody just homeless, which is where
Well,
which is where I've been. You know what I'm
you
saying?
know, I think that the risk, Thurman, with that is, are we getting to a point where we almost like have the death of the expert? Like everyone is trying to do everything. Um, like
I don't
like
think
I
so.
have to have a marketing department, I have to have an HR department, whether it's an agent or whether it's people. We're all trying to do the same thing. Like we're spending a lot of productive time creating a lot of output, and maybe there's a lot of revenue that's generated through doing that, but we're actually treading water and getting very little done because we're all spending our time spinning around doing exactly the same thing. In my view, that would be a worst case scenario. I think the best option for this is that the AI helps us to eliminate that drudgery, helps us to get rid of the things that we don't want to do, because we don't all want to be employers, we don't all want to be HR people, we don't all want to be issuing invoices. Some people do want to do that, and that's okay. Let them do it. Let that carry on. But it's to do with allowing you to focus on the things that actually matter to you. And if we
Well,
just
yeah,
go from doing the stuff that we hate to managing agents that do the stuff we hate, the real thing that is important to think about there is we haven't dropped the responsibility for doing the things we hate. We've just added a technology layer in between us and it. And I don't think that's what anyone wants.
yeah, but to your point, let's say that the person I was just talking about, that Oracle person that got fired, they can do the development, and they enjoy doing the development. So that's the road they're going to go down. Whatever road that looks like, where they hire people or hire agents or a combination, they're going that way because not only are they good at it, but they enjoy doing it. Now, let's say that somebody who was doing marketing only picked marketing because it just seemed like the thing to do and it was fine. They got a paycheck, it was whatever. Now they've been fired and they're like, I don't want to do that anymore. You know what I'm saying? What I really wanted to do is I want to be an artist. Let's just say you still want to be an artist in this day when, fake art is everywhere, whatever. You want to be an artist and you think you're really good at it and you enjoy it. So now you're not trying to duplicate what you were doing at Oracle. You're just like, I need to do my art because I enjoy it. And now, is there a way for me to make a living doing art? I think that when people figure out that they might have a better chance of doing something that they actually enjoy and making money from it, that will keep us from all doing a bunch of stuff that we hate. There has to be, on the other side of this, to what you're saying, if we still end up in a situation where people just hate doing what they're doing for on a daily basis, we haven't won. We didn't do anything, because the majority of people right now do not like their job. You know what I'm saying? They don't like the things that come with their job. I got to get up early. I got to wear these clothes that I don't want to wear. I got to drive through traffic. I got to fight with some boss who's telling me that I can't work remote when I know literally I can work remote. I got to talk to people I don't feel like talking to, and I got to do some job that I don't really feel like doing. If all of that goes away and you are just a gardener and you're like, I want to garden for folks in my local area and make a decent paycheck, and this is what I get to do and I enjoy doing and I love doing it, and I can get some help to have the agents do the books for me or whatever, I don't know. I think that's where we might go, because there has to be a I can now do what I actually enjoy doing, as opposed to if we just recycle, and there's a different word. If we just damn, I'm losing it. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's like instead of going that way, you send them this way. What the word am I thinking about? Anyway, if you just send everybody in a different direction, but it's the same destination of I hate my job or I hate what I do for a living, then what did AI do? AI didn't do anything. We didn't take advantage of this. So that would suck if that's where we ended up.
I think
And
that's the risk.
books.
That's what we need to mitigate. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, as someone that doesn't hate your job, Thurman, and doesn't hate what you're doing, before we get out of here, why don't you tell people how they can find out more about what you're doing that you love so much, and maybe they can get inspired by some of the stuff that you're able to show them how to do.
Right. Listen, you're on YouTube right here. That means you enjoy watching YouTube. So go over to the SP Help Desk, the SharePoint Help Desk, my YouTube channel, and check out the latest video. It is actually showing you how you can use SharePoint to create your tasks, a task list. So I will promise you, it's 2,000 times better than creating a task list in a spreadsheet. And right now, before you get a 6 a.m. email on Monday morning while you're still working for your company, I'm sure some team somewhere needs a proper, good, reliable system to manage your tasks. And SharePoint is a great place to start because you're already paying for it, and it's flexible and powerful to where you could build it in your own image. So go check that out on my YouTube channel. What about you, Nick? What you got?
Well, I guess head over to YouTube and see my YouTube channel because this is now published elsewhere. You know, one of the things that I'd like to say is thank you to people who have started listening to us actually on Spotify and Apple podcasts, because we are seeing some people downloading and listening there, which is fantastic, and on the new YouTube channel.
Love it.
But yeah, head over to my main one. I have a new project that I've been working on, Copilot Conversations, which is me having a brief conversation about a particular Copilot feature with an expert in the space. And so go and head over there and take a look at that, and you can find out about all the other things I do, like adoption support and training and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm very excited that we're now distributed much more widely.
Wait, Nick. What was the last Copilot conversation feature?
So the last one was I had Abram Jackson who's been on this show before, and he talked
Yep.
about connected agents. So this was really cool. It's a way that you can have an agent talk to other agents, and then they will work together to get an output. And it's something that anyone can do with even a free Copilot license. So it's a
Sweet.
really powerful capability, but very accessible.
Nice. Good deal. All right, good deal. So yeah, go check that out. All links and everything else will be in the description. Nick, this was great. Always great. And I appreciate it, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.